Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. I'd like to comment very briefly on something that was in the news today. And that is that a gathering of quote-unquote social conservatives meeting to come to some kind of consensus on a candidate to support have come out in favor of Rick Santorum. Now, I want to ask you, because this does bear upon quite a lot of different things, I'd like to ask you to consider the following. Most of these quote-unquote evangelical, quote-unquote conservative, social conservatives, are from Protestant denominations. Evangelical movement is largely, almost exclusively Protestant. And these Protestant churches and the people who are members thereof, presumably, are anti-Vatican, anti-Roman Catholic, and anti in the sense of having the aegis of the Pope over their heads and the control paradigm of the Vatican oppressing them, as well as doctrinal issues that are, quite specific and rather broad in some cases as well. That these people are largely of that camp, have no problem supporting a candidate who is a Knight of Malta, which means that he is a virtual slave of the Vatican. Now, how do you support this idea in the cognitive dissonance of the minds of these people? Well, it's quite simple. Because in the quote-unquote social conservative milieu, the most important things that your candidate could ever do while they are in office is to oppose abortion in any and all forms, to be opposed to just about any kind of efforts to educate people on sex or sexuality, and also to getting the federal government or any kind of guidelines out of education, attacking social programs that are designed to uplift the poor, that are designed to help people avoid starvation and death. Anything that bolsters programs that help people get out of the mire and misery of joblessness, homelessness, and living on the streets. But most importantly, that key position of being anti-abortion. Now, I realize that abortion is a very important issue to a lot of people, and it's extremely personal. And one may very well choose a religious point of view and a religious dogma to follow that supports their own beliefs on this matter, which is perfectly understandable. But considering the range of things that a president of the United States supposedly is to be in charge of, and that's a whole other argument, whether or not he has any power at all, in the face of how the government is actually run by corporations and multinational financial institutions. But let's just assume that the president actually does have power. Does it make any sense at all to you that in the face of all of the calamities that face our society today, the economy, the nation as a whole, and war, and all of these other things, that the social conservative paradigm should be so focused on issues that are extremely personal and have really no bearing on greater society and the living or dying of the quote-unquote nation. And that they're willing to throw aside their, at least nascent, opposition to Vatican authority and unite behind a candidate who is, because he is a Knight of Malta, he is directly in subservience to the Vatican. Does that not negate everything that Protestantism stands for? So evangelical social conservatives are willing to throw everything about their beliefs under the bus in order to promote very specific agendas that have absolutely nothing to do with governance. Now that's assuming that the president actually does govern, which I don't believe he does. But just rolling with that idea. Now, if they're willing to throw everything under the bus in order to unite behind a candidate which is under the authority of the Vatican and has no relation to the beliefs that they ostensibly follow, then one has to question the validity of those beliefs and the rationale by which they conduct themselves. And does this not also mean that, quote-unquote, social conservatives who are so focused on either abortion or anti-gay or anti-homosexual agendas, to attacking social programs, to attacking education, to attacking science in the form of teaching evolution in schools, all of these things, as somehow this is important? How is this important when you are faced with a country on the brink of complete and utter collapse? And yet this is what these people choose to focus on. But then, does it really mean that they're operating from a perspective of being from the Protestant tradition when they can openly endorse a candidate who is under the complete control of the Vatican by way of the Knights of Malta? And one other thing as well, which should be interesting. What does that say about religion as a whole? Are any of these religious groups, these evangelicals, concerned so much about the Protestantism which gave rise to their individual churches and the idea of being opposed to the rule of the Vatican and the teachings of Roman Catholicism as compared to that of Protestantism? Obviously they don't care about the differences and the legacy and the history of where they came from if they're willing to throw all of that under the bus in order to embrace a candidate who will say whatever he needs to say in order to support the idea of this anti-abortion, anti-homosexual, anti-everything that social conservatives are anti, because they're not really pro-anything, they're just massively anti. So what are the real origins of religion, and what does Protestant even mean? And finally, one must also question the validity of endorsing a candidate, not only who is a virtual slave to your supposed anti-religious body, the Vatican, but also endorsing a candidate who is a complete fucking stupid moron who has no fucking brain in his fucking crazy head. But maybe that's just me. Thank you. Good day.